Okay, we are good to go. Don't mind me, just making sure that we are good today. Making sure that I can see everything. Okay, looks like sweet. So we're going to be testing out some stuffs today. Did not even take off the price tag on this one. So I found this wonderful paper earlier today, or no, I'm sorry, I found this yesterday when I went out for some restocking of ink supplies. There's a small art shop near me called Green's Art Supply. It's out in Rochester, Michigan, and they are like this tiny little hole in the wall place, and they're really nice. It's an older couple that owns the place, and yeah, shop local. You'd be surprised at like the cool people that you'll find in your local art store anyway. But I found this, and I hadn't seen this in like Michael's or anything. I had seen this only, well, I dreamed of something like this. This is the first time I've come across it in a while. This is a mixed media toned paper. Normally, Strathmore has a set that's like a toned paper, but the tone isn't great. Like it's not a thick paper. It's only meant for sketching. It is in fact a sketch paper. It goes great for with dry media, not so much the like inks and stuff that I like using. And even the Artigan tends to fall apart and kind of eat after so many coats worth of like even white ink on my black Artigan. So this is specifically a mixed media paint or paper. This was not cheap, as you can see. The price tag here, that is $16.79 US. Now they do tend to charge a little bit more because, you know, it's a smaller mom and pop shop. They are paying for smaller amounts than like Amazon, but I was able to, you know, get it locally this way. I don't have to wait for it to come in the mail. So we're gonna try to not hit the camera with that. Oh, actually, hold that thought. It just occurs to me. I gotta double check. I want to make sure that everything is looking good as far as these settings on my mic. I went through the other day and didn't realize that I'd had it There we go. Okay, good. Just making sure that my mic was actually working this time. I went through like an hour last time. With the mic dropping in and out, it wasn't working correctly. So good to know now. We're good. So anyway, we have paper. We're going to rip off a piece and we're going to have fun with it. I have my airbrush that I have brought out. Now, the cool thing about this stuff is that it's nice and thick. It's like pretty much a cardstock. So that's what I'm hoping. This is going to hold up to the immense amount of paint and ink that I tend to plaster on my ink work. And I'm going to airbrush on top of this too. So the problem that I've had with other pieces is I throw work everywhere. Okay, so this is when I started. I didn't finish. It's very rough. But you can see how this started happening. It got too saturated there and part of it busted off, and even like some flaking here, that was all just from it busting off after the fact. So it just got damaged because too much water. So anyway, hoping that this will hold up a little bit better. And I have an idea of what I want to do. So for that, I've got a couple little stencils that I'm going to be using. I'm probably going to mute it during the actual airbrushing portion. So I throw my stuff everywhere. Just because I don't want to kill anybody's eardrums. But no worries. I promise I will turn it off of mute when I am done. But yeah, these are really cool because I can use this as like sort of a block for the airbrush. So I don't accidentally overspray. I'm not that accurate with it. And I'm still relatively new with the airbrush. I'm getting better at it. But I still occasionally have mostly maintenance issues, honestly. It's more of like I'll get a clog and not know how to unclog it. Or it'll spit on me or something like that. Or I have a hard time adjusting everything because I'm not 100% on what everything does. And yeah, like today I had to take it all completely apart to make sure that my nozzles would stop clogging. And even then, there's parts of it that I missed in paint and, or with some, some airbrush paint. So I have no idea what I am doing wrong. But here we are. So I have some airbrush color. This is Jacquard airbrush color. I've had this for a while. And so the cool thing about greens is whenever I go in there, you can find some more off-the-wall stuff that I can't find at your local shop. This is really how they've stayed in business with the Michaels just down the street. It's not that they're there to sell cheap canvases. They know that they can't really compete with that, so their canvas selection isn't amazing. But they're the only place that you can get like actual glaze or kilns for pottery, or I think you can get throwing wheels there. They've got some airbrush supplies, but I think I'm like the only person in the area that actually uses any airbrush color. So, even the stuff that I've seen on their shelves, like I've been hesitant to see if I wanted to buy it, only because it looked a little sun bleached. Because just no one gets it. No one buys it. No. That's what I need to do. Just throw the utility knife on the ground. So this type is a top loading one. I have to be careful because if I tilt this, I'm going to just spill it everywhere. I have a general idea of what I want to do. I've also got some tape up here that will... My airbrush is all over on the back there. That'll give me a good idea of like, at least what I want to start out doing. In fact, now that that's all loaded, I'm gonna very carefully set that in the holder. Rearrange my workspace so I don't tip it. I have broken ink in here before. It's rough. It was everywhere, absolutely everywhere. No, that was a funny thing. Like the bottle itself didn't break, just the top came off of the bottle. Just decided to let go, and half of my magenta just went everywhere. That took forever to clean up. So we are looking for that. I have a couple pieces of scrap paper over here I'm also going to be using to kind of doodle on. So set my Strathmore over here, since this is going to be my final piece here. So I have an idea of what I want to do, and I can kind of plan out how big I want to go. So if I know I want to make a stencil that's going to stand out a little further, I can, make a mark there, make a mark there, and I know that I want that to be the largest part. Something like that. See what we're getting. And I don't really care what this particularly looks like as far as accuracy. I'm looking for a quickie stencil that I can cut out real quick, put over top, and spray around to give the background some nice airbrush toning. So kind of like a gator head, honestly. I'm using a Sharpie to sketch out here, so don't judge me too hard. So if I have my eyeball there, and you're gonna have, I just want to make sure that my head's gonna come up enough. And then we'll have teeth on either side. And then I'm thinking about having some sort of like a gemstone sitting in the mouth. I think that's what I'm going to do. So to take this and transfer it onto here. First I'm going to refine the edge a little bit. Add some anatomical features, like actually like having a mouth too, it helps too. And just up the jaw. Now this is also, like, even though I'm going to end up destroying this stencil, I can still use it as a quickie reference for like my original idea. So it's not like this time is wasted. This is sort of just like my concept phase, you know? I've just gotten to the point where, I don't know, I'm not that attached to my initial sketches because they're just so rough and so messy everywhere. And I've got a plan for back here, but I can't do it here. Yeah, because there's the back of the skull there. Now, as far as the nostrils, we'll do top facing, kind of like a croc or a gator. Make their noses on the top there so they can breathe underwater, or while mostly submerged underwater, I should say, not actually breathing underwater. There we go. And just a double check to make sure I've got some good forms. Take a nice big chunky marker, and I can really start putting in some cool shapes. And I really want to get the stencil, especially, like, I need to get that looking cool. Now I'm going to do it without the teeth for right now. But I do have a plan for it. There's a reason why I've got a couple of strips. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, forgot. I didn't actually put it in frame. There's a couple of strips worth of tape right above. It's kind of looking a nice big old eye. Since it's going to be nice and up close, might as well have fun with it. And do some detailing on like a lizard eye. It's going to be very textury. It's going to be cool to do in dip pen. Let's see, like just adding a little value and just gives me the idea of where everything is going. Helps a lot. That's just a giant scribble mess, so don't judge me too hard here. A little bit. You can judge me a little bit. This is why I'm not in love with my initials, or my initial sketches, because I tend to scribble very, very roughly in my first sketches. I do a kind of a mix between what you're initially taught to like do nice loopy line work. I don't just do that. I also like to use color or shadow with a marker or something to block out my forms and shapes. These are, to me, the most interesting part of painting, honestly. When I have something that's got nice, strong lighting on it, it's like my favorite thing in the world. So that's sort of been how I'm taking off with it. And I've always been like that. I've always, like, even with fine art and everything, my favorite pieces tended to be the ones that were more extreme with the lighting. All right. I'm not worried too much about. I think we're going to keep that one. And we'll kind of like rough up the top there, right? So from here, I want to do most of my rough sketching here and my brainstorming here, so I don't have to worry about it later. So this here too. I need to extend that lip out. I think I'm only going to do the front jaw of the jaw, though. Alright, so that's there. So actually, I have the perspective wrong. See, this is why I have to double check it. Double check in here to here. As I spend all the time drawing on a piece of scrap paper as opposed to scrap Bristol, I think. No, I think this is not even that. I think this is just like a thicker printer cardstock that I had. I'll have to do some looking on eyeballs, see what I like as far as what to do with it. Alright. So everyone likes X-Acto knives and everything. Honestly, I can do dang near the same thing with a utility knife and a steady hand. I just use my hand to guide it down. The blades are way cheaper because it's a utility knife, and they can cut through more materials without dulling, and I almost cut myself there, I say. Now, I think I'm also pretty sure that the one I'm using, for all I know, this very well could be a dull as hell blade. I tend to use my blades until they fall off, and I'm not supposed to. Like, literally, they will just get to the point where they're fighting against the material enough that they can't cut through it, and they just give up and fall off. Haven't broken one, but I've had ones get so worn that the holder couldn't grab onto them well anymore. Or they loosened from the amount of pressure I was putting on them. Now, why am I doing all of this? You'll see. Now, I am going to do these front fangs, I think. So I've got some lighting going on. Some of these can be added after the fact with some white, but I also don't want to rely on that too much because this isn't white paper. It's like a blue-gray. I don't have the ability to go back to white here, or back to start, I guess, without mixing up a physical color and layering it over and hoping that I can match not just that, but the heathered texture of this paper. So whether or not I can do that is a big old question mark, especially since I have a very bad habit of revising and over-revising my work, especially since I can color match like the Dickens. As it turns into a big old art project. I promise I'm almost done. Could you use scissors? Yes. Yes, you could. Am I going to use scissors? No. Mostly because the scissors that I have, and I'm not even sure if I have some scissors that can do this finer work around me. I have X-Acto knives in the studio. I just choose not to use them a lot of the time, especially since right now I don't have a lot of blades. And there we go. And leaving a little extra is not a bad thing, because it might look a little on the scrawny side on this side. And the cool thing is, when I cut this out, if I do pick this up and it's still from the back gets a cool dragon silhouette, then I know I've done something right. Yeah, I can tell that it's getting a little dull because it's not cutting all the way through the paper. That one didn't cut all the way through. And there we go. So we have, now if I was really careful and did that in one go, I would have an opposite stencil as well. So I could shade out the interior by cutting out the inside. And if I'm really careful and do it in one go, I can actually have both. But I'm not really worried about that, because I can always mask it off with tape as well. If I'm doing a small area, a lot of times that's what I'm doing. This will help me get the silhouette down. I have a plan for this up top here. But I'm going to have to augment it with a little bit of tape. Now, I also cheap out a little bit on the tape. I grab stuff from the hardware store, because artist tape will cost you like $10 a roll, right? That's not cool. Trying to make sure my head's also not in the camera. I'm also trying not to cut myself though, so. No, that can stay. I was going to cut that off. I'm like, wait, why? That's not going to be his thin little neck. That's just the one section of it. That's right. So now to actually do painting on the painting. So I will put that down. Somewhere where I think it looks cool. Come on. And I'm going to brace it over here too. So I stuck it down on something first. If you don't, and you just kind of go for it, it can get a little rough. Because sometimes it doesn't want to come back off. Because this stuff is the sharp lines tape. I was actually supposed to use not sharp lines, but I was supposed to use their delicate surfaces. If you want to go straight from the roll, you have to use their delicate surfaces on most paper. But multi-surface sharp lines will work if you stick it down to something for a while and then peel it off, stick it down one more time, peel it up, and then you're good. And that works anyway, because I can stick it to my mat. And cut that. So you got a nice little strip. Now I don't have to have it totally straight. I can curve it. In fact, if anything, it relaxes my curves because there's only so much I can do at one time. without causing the paint or the tape to flex weirdly and then curl, and I don't want to deal with untangling it, so you just be careful. You'll learn very quickly to be careful. So there's a reason for this. And there we go. And I can just have this tape sitting up here for as long as I feel like I want it. Alright, so I've got this little strip. There, so that way it gets a little thinner as it goes on up. Honestly, I'm not 100% on this line, so I'm going to lift it back up. Maybe it's this one. This is the other cool thing about it. Like, I can adjust by editing with the tape. I just have to be careful because like that, even that there, that little bit grabbed the paper for a second, almost ripped it. Especially since I'm putting a lot of force on it trying to rip it. I should have the utility knife in my hand and try and cut it, but I'm really trying to keep my head out of the camera, so. And without headbutting it this time, because I'm really good at that too. Alright, so this one I think does have to go back up. Just curving it a little further. Yeah, I can deal with that. Chunk of tape on me. Now, same thing down here. I can take this neck. And I honestly want it to kind of curve off a bit more. Honestly, some of this is probably going to get cut off anyway, because I am going to tape off the edges, because otherwise they tend to bow as they get really, really wet. No, I ripped both pieces. Too short, that's funny. Or the one I ripped just now too short. The funny thing is, like, I'm so horrible at taping stuff down. I have no idea why I prefer this. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever for me to like this. None whatsoever. Because normally I will fight tooth and nail to not have to tape anything down, because it's an extra step. But with the airbrush, I find that it's just like, it gets everywhere. Anywhere that I think it's not going to get, yeah, no, it always gets everywhere. There's no stopping it. Listen, I was trying to get away with not having to cut off another one when I put this one on, and with those little ones. So we're gonna nix these little shits here. Get rid of those, and replace it with something that's actually the right side. Okay. I still got a couple pieces for whenever Okay, so airbrush time. Warning, noise. It's probably going to be a little extreme. Make sure, hopefully, it doesn't pick it up too bad, but I'm sure it will. Just to be difficult with me. All right, so we're going to go in here. I'm going to block off anywhere I don't want. Test it out. Splatter. It's like the saddest thing in the world if it just spits on your work. So there's not really a great way how to undo it. Like it's always just going to be this centered little splatter dot. I could kind of dab that one out. This is honestly airbrush paint, not an ink or anything, so it doesn't dry as fast. Every time. Every damn time. I can get nothing in my house because by the time I start doing stuff, I get interrupted. It's very frustrating. But what can you do, right? The old COVID life. And we're both working from home. So I'm going to hit light over here and then go heavier into the background. I wanted this to pick up a little bit of the color in the background, so I kept building. See, this is just like a little frost right now. I might do this all in teals. That would be cool to do all this in teals. This is the cool, or supposedly this is blue paper. It honestly looks pretty warm to me for a blue. But what can I do? When you live in it. So as far as that teeth line, so I get that one. We're going to carve out some teeth in some tape. Oh, perfect. So from here, I'm really just carving out. some rough shapes that might look vaguely teethy if you squint a bit. The big fangs are already done, so we're really just working on background teeth here. They get a little pointier as they get forward, because those are meant for more of the ripping, the tearing. And the back ones are going to be more molars for chewing. But we're going for more like, not a true like molar, we're going for more almost like a shark's tooth-y look here. I have tiny little pieces of tape everywhere, as usual. See here I'm sitting here saying, oh, I'm totally going to mute the mic when I do the airbrush, and then I did not. All right. All right, so now I'm going to take this, line it up with the mouth, and pull that on over. And see how it ends on the white? I don't mind that it's not completely. I'm going to do the same thing with the interior of that mouth. You know, it's hard to do this at an angle. This would be ideal to do this while I'm standing. I just chopped that whole section off on accident. There we go. I can also do it this way. Is this roundabout? Yes. Are there probably better ways how to do this? Definitely. 100%. There's no way in hell that, and well, I don't know, some people might. So at this point, see, that point, this needs to be, for the most part, done. We're kind of done with that. Just hitting around those teefies. And this is where I'm going to start darkening up areas too. Down here. Angle matters. You can kind of shade with it. I just have to be careful because this one doesn't have a lid. It's holding up pretty okay so far, the paint, or the paper is. Like, I don't feel like it's melting. This isn't the hard part though. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Hoping I didn't mess up the camera too much. We'll find out in a minute. There's a delay, so I can't tell right away. Not the world's loudest sound, but it's not everyone's favorite either. So I apologize, anyone with headphones. I've been told it wasn't too hideous last time, but they could be totally lying to me. I don't know. I was also using a different mic last time too. All right. So this is where this thing comes in. So I can kind of facet this gemstone. Okay. There we go. So you can tell, like, I go through quite a bit, and I do a lot of layering. So I need a paper that can really hold up to this. Now, the only problem that I have with it is the fact that it's like a bucket sheet. If it wasn't a bucket sheet, I'd be like, hey, I could use this all the time. Now, I'm going to have to look online, see if there's any way to say it's cheaper anywhere. I will still probably buy it from my local store, just because I like supporting that local business. A couple extra bucks is fine if I know it's going to support, like, you know, good people and I like the store. Yeah. Okay. A little extra color there. So it's not completely white. Put that down. And now let's see the damage. Now there's been a couple times where I have realized, like this. This is the big area that I was worried about. Because I can see an ever so slight little bit there. But by the time I'm done, you won't. This comes with taping down the last little remainder of the edge. Last. And that one piece is trying to stick on me. Ever so slight tear on the paper. If you have a tear, ever, don't keep going with it. You can take this piece here and either glue it down or sand it down so that it's not there. You do not have to sit there and, like, you don't have to deal with the hanger, but you don't have to sit there and, like, just tear off the entire thing. You didn't ruin the piece. You can fix a teeny little nudge, but don't just keep ripping. You gotta, like, approach it from the other side at that point, kind of coax it off. And it's my only issue with using this tape, but I happen to have bought a crud ton of it, so I'm kind of stuck with it now. I jumped at the idea of a 3-pack. So I'm hoping, yeah, you can just barely see the lines there. That's exactly what I was looking for. This whole section is going to have to come up. I'm trying to keep it kind of flat-ish to the paper as well. You don't want to pull, like, up. You want to pull along the paper. I saw this thing fling off, and for a second there I thought it was paper, but no, it is the other piece. It's part of the stencil. And at this point, all these tiny little ones, like, I don't have to save these anymore. They are trash. I don't know why I'm trying to. It's a little bizarre that I cannot let tape go sometimes. I don't know what it is. I need to use all of the art supplies. I will use my pencils down to the point where they're nubs. I will keep stencils way longer than I should. And part of that is for a while there I was painting and then repainting and repainting original copies of a painting that I was doing. And it was very labor intensive for what I was getting paid for. Like, it would take me a couple hours to do one. And after shipping and everything, like, it wasn't making insanely a lot. I was profiting after doing the actual money or the actual math on it. Originally, I thought that I was not making a profit, and I was. I was definitely not just working for exact cost, but I was not paying myself quite what I was worth there. My worst case scenario is whenever I get little marks of tape on the big stencil because they stick out like sore thumbs. Like this one here is the only harsh one, I think. Which actually, where did I put it? I had my sanding block. I don't know where I put it. It's somewhere around here. I have no idea where. Oh well. What? I keep losing everything. It's really irritating. I've also been pitching stuff on the floor left and right, so I don't know. So yeah, we have a dragon-ish looking thing here. Now I still have my airbrush on because I'm going to hit it with a couple other little like shades and shapes. Like, I'm not done here. I've got some Bombay blue. And then I've also got some Bombay, try not to hit the mic, but Bombay purple. And I'm going to make like an ultramarine kind of color. There's already a tealy blue in there. It's turquoise. So I shouldn't have to worry about the transfer being off color. And there's no white or anything in it. So I don't have to worry about it being completely opaque or anything like that. It'll still layer over top of stuff. I'm going to, however, need this guy here. So the question is, do I want to do the blues and purples on the inside? Or if I want to stick to the outside still? And leave the dragon mostly... No, honestly, here's an idea. We will do the shading portions. The other one, we'll do that here. All right, so from here, and that's okay because I can have some overspray here. So first off, start spraying on the thing and make sure I get the color. Yeah, you can kind of tell where the purple ran out and the blue is starting to take over. And then block this off. There we go. I'm just double checking my original drawing. This is why I cut this piece in such a weird and bizarre shape here. Is it a weird shape? Yes. Yes, it is. But it must be. I'm kind of doing an overlap a little bit. And I can kind of sculpt it around. I do a little modeling, you know? Ah, ran low. Added just a little extra purple. And then we've got some, I've got some shapes that I need to hit a specific angle on. So that's where I have this for. This is a piece of extra craft foam. In fact, it's a little big. So I can take this and hold it in the angle to make the lines that I want. And get that angle. And at this point, I assume that my hands are just going to be covered. If you work it really quick, you can nudge it or smudge it out a little bit. And I can always hide little imperfections with texture, which I will anyway. So if you happen to be popping in and you made it this far, feel free to give me a like, give me a subscribe, share, etc. I am brand new to this channel here. I should say is relatively new. I say that, but really is it? No, it's not new anymore. I just am pretty dang small. I don't have a ton of content out, but I'm hoping that some of it's at least a little informative. So if you like art stuffs and just like a little background talking, little chatting. I'm trying to get these angles to where I'm getting sort of like a hard edge. And I don't worry too much about having a little bit of overspray or like some weird shapes. That's okay. What matters is how to get some really cool ones out of it. So again, darker on the purples. Don't want to go too dark too fast, and it's already getting pretty saturated. The cool thing about this paper, doing this on it, is that it's letting that blue kind of bleed through. It's working with the work. And a little bit of overlap. It's not going to hurt. Set that off to one side. Sometimes it's just easier. To just use the straight edge. We're going to get an eye socket kind of built out of here. Add some random shapes here. Like an eye socket in there. And this is where we have that lower jaw. And that happens a lot too. And I don't want to have a big old shiny spot, but it'll be just like I put a little too much pressure on it. And it gets all runny and such. And the only way how to really cover it is to just go really dark in that area. And this is why I need an extra sturdy paper, because I tend to go a little hog wild with it. Adding some little bits of detail. I don't know how much of this is getting picked up. But for a second there, because I touched it myself, I want to make sure I didn't put the wet edge on my clothes, which I have totally done before. So we're getting like a little belly line here. And this is where I'm just going to start doodling a little bit, especially with the next color, because I'm going to switch them back to the blues. All right. Adding the blue. I'm not sure, but there we go. There's the blue. Doing some freehanding, because hey, why not? Let's just give you a little triangle of shadow there. And then get the lights, then get the shadow again. This is all shadow. promise, this will look good. I swear. Just a little experimental right now, and that's okay. But honestly, I've been really digging the experimental type looks. I just don't want to touch that anymore. I think this is going much there. A little heavy on those teeth, but that's alright. Almost done with them. Just notice that he's got a little bit of an overbite. Add. You see if I can't make a cool little horn shape on the front. This is just like add texture somewhere, so the little bits that I have don't look too out of place there. Same thing within here. Trying to see can be hard, but we're getting there. It's just about an hour in. I'm spending too much time on the airbrush. In fact, I think that is going to do it. I'm going to cut myself off on the airbrush, at least for now. Turn that off, and my hands are now a little covered, but not nearly as bad as usual. Usually they're worse. Don't mind me. Hold on one sec. My music stops. What the heck? Okay, so now I also bought a couple other things, which is kind of cool. So in addition to the paper, currently drying, I have these cool little doohickeys. Now, these are pen nibs. And I already have a small collection of them in my fun little box up here. I don't want to damage the box. It's a cool little box. It's all retro-y and stuff. It's not actually, but... Actually, for all I know, it could be. They have been there that long that it would not surprise me whatsoever if this linoleum cutter packaging wasn't like a 2020 linoleum packaging. So I got 3 nibs. Make sure I can get them on camera. I got this dude here, which is actually really similar to one I already have, but stronger. And that's, I really like having a firmer, more solid nib versus a super flexible one. This one's for nice fine lining. Can never have too many of those. And this one is for nice and big, fat, thick lines and heavy shading. Also for some calligraphy. I have some that do that, but they are ones that are more these type, where they've got the rounded top here. I wanted something that could do squares. And I had some other stuff that was like larger and smaller than these nibs, but I really wanted to make sure that I had like a full good range of them, especially since I don't take care of them very well. Where are my handles? I also got two handles. One's just a typical brown one, which, you know, eh. But then I also got this fancy type gold one here. This fancy old gold one here, which is what I'm going to be using for the most part. And we're going to start with, I think, honestly, where's my turquoise? There's the teal. So I have some teal ink here. I'm going to start doing most of my drawing in. And honestly, I think I'm just going to go for it and see how it turns out. I have no idea if this is going to be like a good idea or a bad idea. Little disclaimer. And a lot of these nibs I have not used before. I was looking for like alternates on how things feel and everything. All right, so I can already tell you right now, this is a little bit softer than I thought it was going to be, but that's okay. It's still okay. Where's the other one? Gotta get my tiny little box of nibs out. So there's this one, and then there's the other big fat one, which I don't want to use the big fat one just yet. But I can put this one in the holder. And actually, I'll put this one back in the holder too. Normally, I have my table laying down whenever I'm doing something like this. It's a little excessive to have it propped up like this, but it's easier to film this way without me cracking my head against the top there. Also, yes, I always feel like I'm going to stab myself with these. So I don't want to jam them on there too hard, and like I already cut into my fingers a couple times. So this is like a smaller version of the same nib, and oh, that is so much. So this one here, you can see there's barely any flex to it when I push against it. Versus I have another one. Now granted, I think this is also like a cheaper nib, but this one here, which has not been cleaned properly, has way more flex. To the point where as soon as I press on it, it is just coming apart. So we're gonna rectify this. I'm going to do a quick little readjustment of the camera. It's actually perfect. All right, we're perfect. We're good. We're good. Color's a little bit on the light side. That's okay. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to start adding lines. Where is my turquoise? So this is teal from, it's Bombay teal from Dr. P.H. Martin's. So I've got this, and I've got a bunch of rags, which I use a ton of. I'm a rather messy painter when it comes to me sitting down and painting. When I'm standing up, for some reason, I can do the neatest job ever, like at an easel. But with ink, it also just gets everywhere. And it doesn't come off as easily as paint, so I want to be a little nicer with it. Hold on. I say, as I have a hangnail. This is what I'm trying to get off. I'm trying to get the hangnail, because that just caught and snagged. And we're good. And this is why I don't bother taking care of my nails, because I'll just like sit there and just gnaw on them if I'm not careful. All right. And when I'm using a dip pen, it is meant to, well, dip. So you dip it on in, get past the little reservoir. Ooh, that was a little far. It's hard to see with where I'm at. Scrape off the one end. And let's start with that horn. Oh yeah. See, it looks way, way different on the nib because it's a copper nib. So the color that I originally get is not exact. I also have to be careful because this is a very stiff nib, and because of that, it gouges into the paper. And this is not the smoothest paper. I haven't noticed any insane bleeding yet, and it's not running. So that's always good. That's my biggest worry, is like, you don't want a paper that's too waxy. If it's too waxy, then you end up with running the issue of the paper running. So some marker papers, they pool at the very top, versus a sketch paper that soaks in the color but also tends to wreck the paper, and you can only do that so many times. I have to try and make sense of all these little bumps that I added earlier. And honestly, sometimes like that's the fun part of it. The fun of it was trying to get a silhouette that worked. This is a relatively new, I don't use the word art style because it's really not. It's like a new process, I guess. I haven't been doing this long, the whole dip pen thing. So if I look a little newbie-ish on it, there's a reason for that. Adding a few other ones, these like bump scab things. They're kind of horn gross. I'm seeing them as horn gross. I'm gonna make them erupt from the skin the same way. Maybe add some at some different angles. And then just like really bumpy skin around it anyway. And I'm going to try and mimic the other side here, but I didn't leave myself a matching silhouette to really follow, so I'm just going to... Doesn't have to be exact anyway. Like, there's plenty of animals that aren't completely symmetrical, like we aren't. Let's do... the frill. See, that caught on the paper a little bit. This really is, it feels a little bit like a thick sketch paper. It isn't the same as their... It's not the same as the Artigan, but it's very similar to it. And honestly, for all I know, it could be damn close to. Like they say, it's mixed media paper, but it is really a mixed media paper because technically any paper you can use multiple mediums on it. It's supposed to be like a, I don't know, it's better than all-purpose, I guess. All-purpose craft paper, I guess. It's not like a I don't want to call it craft paper either because it's not like a cardstock or... It's better than a construction paper. It's like a really high-end construction paper, honestly. Getting used to the action on this nib is really fun, as I'm sure you can tell. And let's add some little warty things around the eye. I'm keeping some of this a little on the gestural side. I can always add more detail as I go. And how long we got here? So right now I've been doing this for about an hour 16. I will go probably till the 2-hour mark. And that'll be all we do today, or at least on stream. But I will finish it up and post it on up. So same thing down here. I am just adding more lines. So what are you doing for the holidays? Hat trick question. So we are staying in, being good little quarantinians and staying in for most of the holidays. There's a couple select small family member visits that we're going to be making, but we are doing like quarantines for it, kind of limiting our bubble even more than we have been this month, because we knew we wanted to see some family members, and like there's some family members that yes, I can totally see whenever. I've also got like 70, or I'm sorry, no, he's like 91-year-old grandfather. It's on my stepdad's side of the family. And I'm horrible with dates, so I know I sound like a horrible granddaughter. But in my defense, that family is very far away. We only ever saw them on Christmas. And it's like Thanksgiving. Still sounds pretty bad. I've always been horrible at remembering dates. I was ashamed at how long it took me to remember my own mother's. I'm adding some scaling to the underside. Funny thing is, like, this almost looks black because of how these colors interact with each other. It's kind of funny how much of a difference adding a teeny bit of line work can be as far as defining where certain shapes are. I'm terrified to go near the eye right now. Just because I don't know what it is. Every time I'm on stream and I attempt to do something a little out of the little out of the ordinary. It just does not seem to go well. And doing things like freehanding in teal ink, yeah, this would be considered out of the ordinary. Doing these nice, big, ornate scales, mostly because I didn't want to do detailing on smaller ones. I'm using the sprays that I did earlier as sort of a guideline and where they go, but if I notice one's a little off, I can change it. Like this needs to end here on the side. I think there's another Mandalorian I gotta catch up on today. There is. It aired, didn't it? Ugh, I need to know what happened. It's probably why my husband was down here earlier, honestly. Asking me if I wanted to watch it. Oh well. Poor guy. Waiting for me to watch that show. I'm caught up now. I'm really bad at watching shows with him, though. Extremely bad. See, it looks black when it first goes on, but then as soon as it dries down, it's less so. I'm trying to figure out how to transition it from jaw to neck. So I'm just kind of like making some shapes that are around shape, adding some warts and bumps and pimples. Maybe some other like nail thorn spike things. I'm adding some in here like little growths. So it almost looks like the horns are more of a skin condition. These scales are absolutely huge. Adding some more weathering and damage to him. As well as some little gestures of like extreme shading, stuff like that. And it can go outside the lines a little bit. It can bump out a little bit. I don't know what it is lately. I've had, like, I was doing great with not having massive artist block. This month has been a little harder. I'm going to break that tooth. So that way I can make this one absolutely huge. It'll look cool once it's all done. I should be using a straight edge here too. But there's a surprise. I'm not doing it. It's a laziness thing. I don't want to go out and get one. Though I have one sitting right next to me, so can't even use that one, I guess. See, that one's going to be a problem. It's almost got a Chinese dragon look with the flared out teeth in the front that I kind of like. I think it's a Chinese dragon. I'm pretty sure. Remember, don't judge it. Can't judge it yet. Cool thing about this is it dries so fast that I can put my hand pretty much right on top of it, with the exception of a couple spots that are still not, and I should really be watching. That even those are probably to the point where I could put my hand lightly on them and they don't do a horrible mass of mess. So what I'm going to do to help fix some perspective issues that I have here is make 2 rows of teeth. So I've got some in the background, some poking out in the foreground. So this way I can consolidate some of these teeth. They got a little much at the beginning there. Again, we're not really tracing anything out, we're just kind of going for it. And I just realized that I omitted the nostrils entirely when we painted. When we painted over them, we just didn't bother putting them in. It's fine. So that's okay. We're adding them in now. Starting to get some form to it. Ish. Still avoiding that eye. And I will continue to avoid that eye. Same thing here. I'm gonna like break these into foreground and background teeth. I don't do teeth really much. Honestly, I've been doing a lot of people lately anyway. I've been doing more portraits than anything. Did a pet portrait. Yeah, so I can do that. Fudging it with the dark lines. That's alright. They are in the background. They're supposed to have a heavier outline anyway. In fact, they're probably going to get a second coat later on. There we go. And I'm going to have to add detail to all these teeth, which is great. I might actually have to look up some pictures of, I don't know, teeth that aren't mine, that aren't humans. If your mouth looks like this, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for both of us. I don't want to go too extreme on the gemstone yet because I really want to look at a reference of it first. Got to add some gums onto here as well. My drawing style can be a little on the sketchy side. You can definitely tell I'm used to working more with shapes of colors than necessarily working with lines a lot. Because I always want to block out shapes depending on their silhouettes. And I like line work, but I have a hard time just like going for it like this. At the same time, just going for it like this also speeds me up a lot, so should do it more. I think there's definitely some gap issues with the top row especially, but for now, we're going to deal with it. Make that look more like a busted tooth. There we go. I promise we will go back and touch up some of these lines here. I also have to stop touching stuff while it is wet because when it dries, it looks way better every time. So like all this, there's a lot of extra ink sitting on top of it that's obscuring my ability to see what is actually there and what is not. Easy enough fix, dab it off. I should have honestly gone over these ones earlier too. If I get raised spots, they tend to stay raised, and I don't want them to be super raised. It's not supposed to be henna, it's supposed to just be an ink drawing. So my watch is like, hey, you can still go out and do exercising. I'm like, no, I can't. It's like 30 degrees outside. It's cold. Alright, so I'm pretty sure when I drew this, I drew it wrong, but that's okay. We're going to make it look kind of ish like shape. So I know this has to go here. That's supposed to go here. And see, we got some slight refraction issues, but that's fair. It's not supposed to be a D20, it's supposed to be a gemstone. A faceted gemstone. Should we get it? Alright, so gems. So you keep saying, like, I should use a reference, and then I don't. All right. We gotta address that eye. There we go. I'm so terrified of sticking my hand in a place that shouldn't be. With this, it's not even funny. Adding eyelid. Sticking my hand in the very ink that I was like, I should be careful around it because I might stick my hand in the ink. And it's a little different than when I'm got the thing flat. This wants to travel down just a little bit. But honestly, the paper is holding up pretty okay. I kind of want to keep some of the motif of down here. So I'm kind of doing almost like flower petal-y shapes for the scales around the eyes. There you go. This is why you should always just, if you have like a weird love of a dead art form, I want you to go ahead and just pick that up this week. Like, seriously, you need to try something new. Even if you painted before and you weren't a fan of it, go draw with a different material that you have. You ever use Conti crayon? Probably not. It's kind of like a pastel. You should totally go try it. Or try dip pen. These are pretty easy to get. In fact, even Hobby Lobby and Michael's and all those. Actually, scratch Hobby Lobby. Don't go there. Go to like Michael's or go to your local your local friendly art store, like I did, and I was super happy. They had a ton at Greens of different selections of nibs, even ones that I hadn't seen in the pre-packs, but you can get pre-packs from like Michael's and all that. The same with the ink. This ink kit came from there. So I'm adding some little markings. Just more detail. See, at first it's all about laying it out, but as the stuff dries, it fades down a little bit, and you can draw over it without it being too in your face. I'm also using mostly darker inks right now, so in the case that I do have something to redo, which I'm sure there's something in here. I can go back over it with the lighter ink. I can go back over it with the second coat of the same thing and it'll get a little darker. And I still haven't used black yet either. So anywhere that really needs to be dark, I can go back in with black. Don't know where I want the eye to point, and I'm really scared of messing that up. So I'm gonna. That one might be one I do actually take a look at in a minute. Go on the interwebs, find a couple of examples of like various cool lizard dyes, and copy one off of an animal or something. The thing is still yelling about my bit rate, and I don't know why. I don't know why. And then after a certain point, I'll switch down to a smaller nib as well. So I can get some really small stuff in there. Yeah, it's a little big. I don't mind if that spreads a little bit. It's in an area that honestly should get a little extra shading anyway. I don't know what it is, but like I was thinking about this the other day, and nowadays with movies, they just kind of run right through me. Once upon a time, like I could tell you what goes on in most of the older Star Wars movies. The new ones have the same problems too. Like I don't remember a ton of actually what happened in the Star Wars movies, as opposed to, or the new Star Wars movies as opposed to the old ones. And I don't know, they're just. I think it's also like you're just so used to seeing all the action movies in the world. It's like you have to fit into a genre or it doesn't sell nowadays. I guess I shouldn't say nowadays. It's always been kind of like that. You can either be somebody who makes movies for the common rabble, apparently, or you can be one who makes art movies, and there's not a lot of overlap in between. But what do I know? Because I don't make movies. I have friends that do, and have, and it's always been one of those things where I'd love to work on a movie set. There's just not a ton of them out where I'm at, you know? And I could definitely leave Michigan more than I could take. Alright, so I've got that line right there that I'm not a fan of, so we're gonna take that. And we're gonna start making we're gonna like break this line up a little bit, especially since it seems like I wouldn't mind adding a good collection of them all over the place. Looks like I'm kind of going towards there. I'm just letting it take me at this point. And come around here. Getting some fun detail work going on here. It's a little on the hard side to see. Funny enough, it's actually easier to see on the monitors right now, just because I've got so many lights going on. Anyway, so while we're talking about Star Wars, let's talk about Star Wars. So I bring this up because I like The Mandalorian. I have a hard time really recalling every single thing that happens in it. But it's definitely like, it's the thing that they've done that has felt the most like Star Wars in a while for me. So don't get me wrong, like I'm not complaining about the fact that I have Star Wars. I'm complaining that movies in general, especially Disney's lately, have been very samey. And I'm less than impressed with how easy we tend to fall back into watching the same damn movie over and over again with a different skin on it. Don't people get so bored of superhero movies? I mean, the ones that are just like, go here, save the day, go here, save the day. There's so many of them. I don't care about Tony Stark because he is Iron Man. I care about Tony Stark because he's a very deeply flawed man with a lot of privilege that tends to have a hard time seeing it, and a lot of power. And he has a hard time or he knows he's got the power, and he has a hard time not flaunting it. So in that case, I like watching him grow as a character, not because of him being Iron Man. And that's another problem that a lot of writers in general seem to have this problem recently with films, where they are writing for an archetype. They're writing for this person needs to fill this particular role, or they need to be pants. Somebody with no personality that the person can just slip on. And they've had this for a while, but like it's been a while since I've had so many complaints about Disney doing that stuff. They've even taken some of their characters and completely mutilated them, like Mulan, where they did essentially turn her from an interesting character into pants. She had no personality into that. Everyone else inferred that she did. But think about it. Do you remember anything she did in that movie? Like her, other than saving her sister? Like if it wasn't martial arts or chi related, do you remember anything about what she did? Probably not. And I know this is nothing new. I don't know why Disney keeps insisting on doing this to their old classics, especially since there's been so, I don't know, mixed emotions about them, I guess. Adding some scales around the nose. That one might look a little funky, but I have to wait until it dries to see. I totally stuck my hand in the dye, or the ink a few times. Anyway, back to me bitching about movies. So, I get the want to make everything update it for today's standards. And there are certain movies that honestly I thought that could be kind of cool. Dumbo actually was one that I was interested in seeing because it wasn't my favorite Disney movie, but it wasn't one that I expected them to do. It was out of the Disney Renaissance segment of movies, and it's rare that they seem to break away from that. Got a little oopsie there. There's not a lot I can do when that happens. I just have to kind of hope they'll be okay. And that when I go back over it, you don't notice it. It also got very saturated there. I just had a bubble. Kind of darken it down a little bit of the lines. Gotta let that dry though. More scales. A lot of times after I'm done with this, I will let it dry and then do the other lighter colors over it. Because I definitely don't want to get a random gray streak with white and black both being wet at the same time. Now that said, I haven't used any white or black yet. Normally I do this inking in black, but this is teal. But I'm going to do a black layer, I think, to get a really nice darks down. Besides, then I can do a nice fancy ink on top of it and firm up any lines that I don't like. I don't know what I was planning on doing, but it wasn't this. That's okay. I was actually expecting him to look a little more like a gator, like a little longer, or a croc. But I think it's in part because the teeth added so much bulk, kind of thickened his schnoz up just a touch, and them spikes on the top of his head. Anyway, back to bitching about the movies. So, yeah, let's bitch about these for a second here. And I will never stop wanting to bitch about these. Like I mentioned, there are ones that I can sort of understand them wanting to do. Like, yes, go ahead. Go ahead and update Dumbo. Remove the more problematic areas, or at least put it into context that looks a little better than just, here's are my racist crows. They're actually called Jim Crow. Oh my god. How did you let Dumbo get a re-release so many times during the 90s and stuff, and yet you wanted to hide Song of the South? Like, between the two of them, honestly, I think Dumbo's a little more overt. I'm trying to add some detail around that nostril so it doesn't look quite as out there. But I'm still working on filling in spots, you know. So the first one of the remakes, of the Disney remakes that I saw, because I skipped out on it. Like, I still haven't seen Beauty and the Beast. I saw enough of that in previews, and I'm like, I'm not going to like it. Um, I heard actually that out of all of them, like, it was not that offensive compared to other ones they've done. Like, Aladdin was rough. I was not excited to see Aladdin, especially since I'm like, no, you're not gonna be able to do the genie like Will or like Robin Williams. Like, there's nothing that's gonna beat Robin Williams at genie, and I'm still kind of flabbergasted that they didn't change his songs. They kept Will Smith singing Robin Williams songs. Why? Like, give him a rewrite of a song then, or theme it to his vocal style. But that wasn't his. The music was really bad. And they omitted a lot of scenes that didn't make sense. But I've seen a lot of hot takes on that one around Aladdin that I definitely agreed with. Um, one thing that I did notice is that, like, there was a lot of people talking about Mulan, and a lot of people had different points to make on that movie because it was rough. Like, it was definitely like deserving of the hate it got. Um, Honestly, it got off kind of light because people just kind of forgotten about it. It would have been interesting to see if it would have bombed if it had hit theaters. Um, I think it would have done better in Disney Plus, but it still wouldn't have done amazing because people would have seen it, realized it was trash, and then like continuously not seen it afterwards. Um, they just managed to take all the character out of it, and they managed to do that with a lot of them. They tried to give Jasmine a character. Um, they tried to make her have other reasons other than just you're a girl, so you have to get married. Which, like, I don't think she needs to want to save the country and actually be I like that she's a responsible ruler. I feel like you didn't have to explain why she didn't want to get married. Just the fact that she didn't want to should be enough. Um, and it was when I was a kid. She was like, "Oh, I don't want to get married," and the little kid in me was like, "Oh, okay, she doesn't want to get married," and I was fine with that. And now you're over explaining it to your audience. Um, that's coming from me, which is rich. Some big pieces on the chin. You want bigger pieces to protect the areas that get hit more often. Anyway. But no, Jasmine irritated me. I hated her song. It didn't even match the movie. Like, do you not realize what movie you were writing for? Um, Mulan was worse. Um, Mulan, they started off by negating her character with the superpowers right off the bat. Like, she doesn't need the chi in general. The chi does not have to be gender separate. If you're keeping the gender theme, why bother with the chi? What is the point of that? Like, the whole point of the narrative was that she was her going to war and her sucking at being a girly girl were two entirely separate issues. They had nothing to do with each other. That's something I see a lot of people like not mentioning, that it doesn't really matter that she went off to war to save. Like, she got lucky, honestly, that she was or within the context of the narrative, that she was able to prove herself in that way. So she didn't end up being forced into a marriage, because from the sounds of it, they had no problem marrying her off. In either one. And I love that the original one also kind of glosses over the fact that her parents were going to totally marry her off. I have no idea the level of accuracy as far as the Disney take on matchmaking, though. So don't take anything I say there with a grain of salt. I've watched a few videos on like Mulan and everything, but it seems like historical accuracy and culture accuracy really varies wildly. Like, at some point, there was probably a Chinese folklore history book on set. I'm not sure if anyone opened it. The phoenix struck me as stupid. Since you had a phoenix, why not just keep the dragon? I get not wanting it to be Eddie Murphy. I get not wanting it talking. Don't understand, per se, the not talking, because it made him really likable, and or it made an otherwise extremely serious movie fun at times. And you didn't get the gravity of the situation this time, because when they find out that, you know, they actually do have to be the real soldiers fighting for war, they can't. Or rather, they can't. They can't empathize with it, because there's not the same level of camaraderie and happiness, and like, oh, we're on a fun little romp through the countryside, and then suddenly all this death. Like, there's no happiness to offset the sadness of that moment in the new one. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Stuck my hand in it. So before, we're at the 2-hour mark. Actually going to be ending in a minute here. I have to eat. All right. Let it bulge out on the one side, in hopes that it doesn't look stupid. All right, I think I'm about ready to switch over to a larger. See, this line is still very stark. Little baby one sticking out won't hurt. Adding some detail onto the big ones will help too. Oh crap, I didn't even do the frills all the way. It dries so faint. It's funny because it starts at so dark. I have a bad habit of going over the same line way too often. Especially when I'm holding something like an entire ink bottle. I should have been doing what I just did there too, and actually drawing from one side onward. I was trying to draw from out to in. I should have been going from in to out. Wanted a scratchy piece, and I got a scratchy piece. And this is, again, like, this is no sketching ahead of time. This was like, my one sketch was done with a Sharpie. Okay, so at this point, I take this over to my ink cleaner bottle. I'm going to let it sit in there for a second or three. So there's a ton of ink on there. I made the mistake of leaving that in there the other day overnight, and it took off some of the color of the handle, so oops. I'm doing some nice, thin, fine shading. Kind of like I would a pencil drawing. And this nib is awesome because it's nice and very solid. Because of that, my pressure doesn't affect it quite as much. I really have to jam on it to get it to flare out. Because of that, it doesn't drip as much. And that was what I was kind of hoping for. And I'm really impressed with this paper so far. So far, this thing has not managed to shred or flex or anything like that. It's holding up pretty okay. I am going to be speeding this video up, I think, because I am recording it too. So I'll be putting this up, methinks, quite possibly. Especially since I plan on working this on this after the stream as well. Maybe not today, but I will be finishing this up. Working on it outside of class time. I'm going to be getting some new play mats in pretty soon as well. So definitely follow me for that. If you don't know, yeah, I sell gaming play mats. The easiest way to get them is to go to my Etsy page. That is KRM Illustrations on Etsy. I don't have a ton in stock right now. There are still some designs though, so definitely recommend checking them out. See, I don't mind this either, because when it fades, you don't see the scratching, except for very subtly. I'm trying to keep them all in roughly the same direction. You can see them more on the big ones, I think. And the lighter ones. And I can go back in with some ink too and splash it on to add a little bit of extra shadows, and I always will. But almost didn't finish that. I'm just going through and I'm kind of messing up, adding some texture to all these little guys. So yeah, so far I'm digging the paper. It's doing what I wanted it to. Same thing with the nib. I'm really happy. I was really worried at first because I went in there not expecting there to be a whole bin of nibs. I just figured maybe they'd have like extra packs or maybe a different brand or something. They sell calligraphy stuff in there, and it's a rare enough thing that I thought maybe they'll have dip pens, and sure enough they did. Do a little shading. That one piece right there, that one's making me sad. I mean, I can add that, and like the nose makes me sad a little bit. I'm trying to save it, and I think I can. I just think that this is not the step to save it in. Every time I hit it, it tends to look a little better, but it's also looking thicker and thicker, and also don't want it to end up being a giant glob, you know? My hand is just so gross right now. So this. it's especially annoying that I have to remind myself that this stuff is going to look way, way different when it dries. So I'm sitting here trying to touch it up. And sometimes I end up going over the whole thing because I can't tell what's new and old. I can barely see the layer that I put down just now. Even these are very faint, except for when I'm like looking at them just right. And that's part of that is the shininess of the ink. It's a very shiny ink. Some of this I might be able to also hit with the brush. I want to do the line art first though, just for today. Actually, sometimes I will go through with the brush first and hit all the shadowy areas and everything. Probably would have turned out better, because then I wouldn't have to work around all these little scratchy marks. Good news is these aren't that dense though. So I should be able to paint over pretty easy. Wanted to make sure it didn't look like one scale was under the other. There, a little love in there. And I think this, once I'm done with this, I think like once I'm done here with the teal, I'll be good to at least let it have a second to dry before I decide, hey, let's do some more. This is a great sketching. More detail. Actually, that one doesn't make sense at all, does it? It's being hidden by the gemstone. So I can start doing a little more detail in the gem too. My hands are getting cold down here too. You can tell it's nighttime. Alright, so I'm not referencing any one. I'm just looking for mostly like light refraction and what does it do. And it usually confines itself to a panel. So this one here will be one side. Most of it is one color. And there are some refractions like I've got, but those are more reflections of other things going on. I think there. Also trying to fix what I did earlier. So I had some weird looking geometry. I still do. We're not going to talk about the gem here. It's really rough. Trying to figure out how I'm going to come back from that gem. That's a really rough one. Just the shape is weird. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done one. I mean, it could be worse. It could be way worse. And I think I've still got a shape that can be salvaged into it. I don't know what shape this is supposed to be. My phone almost fell out of my pocket. I did manage to crack it the other day. You're not a real artist until you've thrown your phone on the ground in sacrifice of painting you're trying to save. Though honestly, for me, it might have been a camera. I'm really bad at camera positioning, in particular, judging when my tripod is actually secure. It's impressive how fast this stuff dries. Yet still, I managed to get it everywhere. Just all over my hands. I'm impressed that it didn't smudge with me rubbing my hand all over it like that. Because really, I was expecting that, especially when I saw how much was on my hand. Like, you can see full patterns. But apparently I put my hand straight down and straight up, and this stuff doesn't bleed. Definitely recommend the Dr. Martens ink here. Like, I have not been disappointed with the quality so far. I did not pay the full price that Michaels wanted. They wanted like $60 for it. It's a $30 set, honestly. Or I think it was like a $40 set on Amazon or something like that. Like, it's cheaper on Amazon. I used to coupon at Michaels to get it cheaper. And yeah, I approve. So there's a couple nibs that I got, and there's one in particular I have not tried, and that is the really flat big one, which I really wanted to know how it was doing on lining. So I figure I'd give it a try and do some work on some of these lines. I'm pretty sure it's going to be like absolutely massive. Swapping pens. So the one was sitting in that cleaner for a while, and I just took the top off of it. It's the same brand of cleaner too as the ink, and it's meant to remove India ink from your brushes, which is good because it is not an acrylic ink, or from your brushes and your nibs. It's a pen cleaner. Okay, so we're gonna bring out the other nib that I got today. We're gonna monkey with it for a minute or two, and then I am going to go eat dinner. If I can find it. Maybe, maybe. I put it in here, didn't I? Did I take it out? Yes. There it is. Soon I'm gonna need a slightly larger nib box. The nib box is from a sewing kit. Had needles in it. Do a lot of recycling of my packages. Okay, so we are going to use this big old guy. And from what I understand, same thing. Just this one's got a very fat nib to it. I was right. I did have it right. And now and then I'll draw through these, and it feels almost like you're drawing with them upside down because of how the nibs are structured. You're like, oh no, isn't going to drop off the back end. No, nope, no, it's not. Gravity is going to hold it on as you do. I've done shittier gems. It's not a good gem, but it's not a horrible gem. Once I get the whites in, I think I can actually turn that into a gem or a shiny metal looking thing. Especially after adding all these. I'm also remembering that this is all just teal, so I can always go darker. I think on this one. That's so satisfying. Love this thicker liner. It really is like having a nice thick Sharpie. There we go. And I'm just using a little bit of ink. Let it be thin. So that way the line art is still a little bit thicker. A little bit darker. There is India ink everywhere. And my hands are getting really sticky. The other things you don't know. As India ink dries, it gets really, really gunky. Really sticky. So it's a new fun experience every time you learn a new medium. That was mine. I have a thing with getting my hands dirty. I don't really like doing it. So that was my damage. And go figure, like, I ended up in some of the messier files. Like, I prefer to draw and paint traditionally than I do digitally. Making the eyes a little darker. Yeah, I can't see what I'm doing because my hand's in the way. So you're getting a little bit of lay and of color. Not doing too crazy with it. This also helps me disguise some of my earlier rougher lines. And just refine some ones that were supposed to be thicker lines that ended up being really thin. It's just easier for me to go in and correct them this way. It's just super satisfying too. Now, the finer the points, the more you're going to get a dig in and you're not going to see the color underneath. Like this, I can see some of the old scales still through what I'm putting down, even as I'm doing it. And as it dries, it gets even lighter. And especially, like, the longer I let it sit on the page, the more it soaks in. So if I want it to be see-through, get it off the page. That said, it's doing a pretty good job right now of staying that way. One thing I am noticing, it acts slightly different on this paper. And at least I think it's the paper. I'm pretty sure it's the paper. And what I mean by different is it, I don't know, it grips a lot. It spreads a long way too. I don't mind it. It'll take some getting used to. Especially like this nib. And same thing here. We are just going to dab that through. Trying to see if I can't get a little toning. Yeah, I can. Scribbling in some color. I can do a couple at once. And then immediately kind of buffing it in. I don't want to get rid of the initial scratchy look. I just want to get rid of a little extra color. Gotta be careful. Don't want to smear it anywhere it doesn't belong. See, I mentioned about smearing and what happens. No one is surprised. This thing actually makes a nice little shader because it blends the color, kind of. Not really blends, but it pulls it so thin that it's just adding like a thin sheen at a time. I dig it. I'm glad I made the purchase. So you say, oh, they're going to be a little longer, and then 40 minutes goes by. Just adding more and more. There we go. I could use other colors to lay on top of this too, but for now. I'm not taking it all off. I'm just like making sure that it's just not a harsh line. You can finger paint if you want. So long as I can start seeing the line through it, that's good. That's a little bit of the paint, or the ink that came up. Probably because I'm oversaturating and overworking it as usual. That happens way more often than I would like to admit. Alright, so I'm adding more little shadows in here. Now this is where I'm kind of using the original toning a little bit, and also like just emphasizing it more. There we go. So I think later on this week or weekend, I will be finishing this up. And then we can go over, and I will be listing this whole thing. You can see it from like start to finish. So then you can come on over and check that out. in the meantime, thank you for making it this far. If you have, please give me a like and a subscribe. I promise my edited videos are at least marginally more informational, with at least a few less dead pauses there. But I promise, either way, you will see more of me. I'll have more videos. I got some really cool ones potentially coming up soon. Soon, TM. Alright, now I'm actually going to go in. I'm going to hit all these teeth. So this one I can kind of fix the shape a little bit on. And that one, point a little bit more. And I'll let that one sit on there for a minute so it can get really dark, since that's supposed to be the interior of the mouth. Anything that's interior I will darken down like that. It's almost like using a marker nib, which I really like. I like that. It's more or less like the thin edge of or it's more or less a chisel tip. Which I know a lot of people like brush nibs with their markers. I don't. I like chisel tips. See, just a little extra off. And I'm sure that there is a way. I think there's someone I've got a book that is on calligraphy, and so in it it mentions something called like bleeding the extra ink with the corner of the nib. I have no idea what that means. Maybe I should have read it. The book, I mean. It came in a silly little cheap kit that I got off of like Facebook Marketplace, used for $5, because I wanted a fountain pen, and it came with one. I was like, oh hey, I can get a fountain pen for $5, and then I have like a how-to book and everything, so I can figure out how to do this. Yeah, because that's working well for me. It's looking a little less dorky of a dragon. There are other colors that are also going to have to go on, I think, to make these really pop. Man, this whole section right here is just so rough. That noses. I mean, I don't think it's beyond saving. I think I can get it back, but it's going to take a minute. For sure. Maybe some highlighting work, since it's getting so dark. Like, same thing with this. I think my least favorite part of the eye like, it's just generally it existing. But I know I've also been staring at it for a minute. I'm trying to make it look not skewed off to one side. And that can sometimes get a little challenging. Is it? Oh, it's almost 10. So yeah, I've been down here for almost 3 hours now doing this. Just shy of. So you've seen like the first 3 hours of a work piece. So you can kind of see how these go. I think at the very least I will continue on with this one to see if I can't make it into something really cool. Sometimes it works out great, sometimes less so. I think adding some shadows down in the chin area is definitely going to help break that silhouette up. And dabbing off the excess. No, I didn't want to go back for more, but here we are. Oh well. And I can just keep on laying on. Why I keep flipping that upside down. That is not how you use this nib. And this is helping tone the underside as well. So like I can see my initial, I don't know, I can see my initial spray, I guess, through it. And I can always overspray on top of this too if I wanted to even out colors. Speaking of which, I have to rinse those out too before I go upstairs. It's so easy to lose track of time down here though. I don't have the I don't really have a great window. I've got like a little half window in front of me, but you really can't tell that it's getting late until it really is. I really enjoy this nib. I'm going to honestly probably use this for a lot more than I do a lot of my other ones that I've been using. I kind of want to do an entire piece. Pretty much just this guy. Could be fun. As I say, as I'm pretty much doing it here. Oh hey, I can save that gum. Adding these thick shading lines helps hide a lot of more sketchy work at the beginning there. While also giving this a little more depth. It's getting shiny too. I can tell that I've been working it a lot because it gets shinier and shinier as I work. And it gets harder to see on the stream piece too. Talking while arting is hard, so I apologize if I stammer a bit. I've been using so much of this teal. Come on. I drop stuff way too often. And then there is a good section of this that just needs to be washed in a darker color. I'm a little intimidated to do that until everything else is dry, because this stuff will, if it's like half dry, it will smear and pick up a little bit if I plaster another color on top of it. And like I mentioned before too, the paper does not deal well usually with being that saturated. Now this is different paper, but I'm not sure if I want to trust it, given that I've never used it. My lips are peeling. Speaking of lips, I don't have a lip ring anymore. I'm sad. I'm letting it close up. I did have one. I actually got one when I went out to see, I believe I got it when I went out to see Cam, which I liked my lip ring, and I wouldn't have gotten rid of it, but I lost the ball to it, and I did not have the ability to go out and get a new one, and I felt like it was kind of silly to go out in a pandemic for a body jewelry that, if worst case comes worst, I can always go back and get it again. Especially at the time of day, it was not ideal. Not ideal timing. It was the middle of the night. See, those are nice teeth. Just adding more and more detail. And more. And more. And for a change of pace, more detail. Yeah, I don't mind that smear. That's a good smear. Sometimes the smear is good. So I want to add shadows, but I don't want it to blend in with the background too, so I got to just like a little bit. Just remember, it's not going to be that dark. See? There's certain things that only get like one pass of color, and certain things get like 8. And then some stuff that I have to let sit on there for a minute to let it take, like this, that I didn't do last time. The abstract little squigglies also help. Whee. What time is it? It's 10:05, so I haven't passed my cutoff time of my cutoff time. That's funny. Gives it almost like a watercolory feel. You just let it smear. But not all the time. Sometimes keep it nice and dense. This is why I don't mind doing everything in that teal too, because eventually the teal will blend right in the darkest parts of the teal I'm putting down. And some more shadow down on the frill. See, I could keep doing this for like hours and hours and hours. And will, often. This will take up my entire day. Just pushing it darker and darker. Because I'm not using black, I still have a tone that I can go darker. That on. I think so far, so good. Step back in our cleaner. Set this one off to one side, and we're going to do one last thing. And that is, I'm going to take this brush, dip in a little bit of the teal. And this is a filbert So this is anything that needs to be like a full-on wash. So that would be things that need to be really super light, like I can for sure see the near them. So you can take that off. And start laying in yet more shadows. And this way it keeps it in like larger shadow shapes too. So I don't have 8 million teeny little shapes that are all disjointed. It's also how we're gonna attempt to make all this look uniform. And it's how we're gonna get the backlit look in there. Because really all this is all stuff that I want to dye in. And see, now you can see that little bit of toning helped and give me a more snouty snout. Same thing with aligning that top lip. And there's some that I'm okay with smearing and then some not. Depends on where I'm at. Little circles. Don't want to buff it out too much. I don't want to damage any of the raised ink, which I will over time. This will sandpaper its way through it. And I am letting this go pretty much until I'm out of ink, honestly. And as soon as I take off that little bit of moisture, just kind of clicks. I like it. Don't want to go too dark with the whole thing though. I will regret that. Once you go too dark, I just kind of have to dedicate to it. At that point, it's not a purple dragon; it's a black dragon. There, adding that shadow along the back neck really helps break up that frill. Anyway, so yeah, this is how I paint with inks. So exciting. It's honestly really satisfying to hit. And see, this is still letting all that detail through, but it's toning it blue. There. That's starting to get really shiny. Just got to create some like cloudy shapes. And there, it's starting to look more shiny. You also don't realize just how not dark my other layers were until you start getting like really dark stuff in there. So yeah, it was hard to see that I could even get this dark at first. And yeah, here we are. So many little tiny itty bitty little scales everywhere. All right. It's probably like 10:30. No, it's 10:16. Okay. Definitely getting late though. Because that is what I do. I don't stop. You can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Anyway, that is going to be all for today. So I'm going to let this guy sit and dry and come back and work on him more. And like honestly, like probably tomorrow will be a good point. Don't like the corner of that eye. I want to kind of bury it a little bit so I can add different details. The white still has to be added onto it, and there's also no black on it yet, so I might do that too. In the meantime, I will see you guys next time. Bye.